Hello and welcome to the Fulhamish YouTube channel. And on today, we're looking ahead to the Square 6 derby on Saturday evening, obviously against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And joining me as usual to talk anything Chelsea and to look into the game is the one and only Stamford Chidge. How you doing, Chidge, mate?
I'm all right, Dom. Good to see you, mate.
You too. And I mean, we last spoke because obviously ahead of the game at Craven. Things have mightily changed at Chelsea. I think you were at top four race at that point. If anyone said you would be in the upper hand into a Champions League second leg against Madrid, I think people would have been very surprised. But what have you made of what's happened? Obviously, I think that win against us was one of Lampard's last games, if I remember correctly. And then you brought in Thomas Tuchel. Simply the fact that you brought more experienced manager. Do you think that there is more to it than just that?
Blimey, Dom, that would take about a week to explain, let alone 10 minutes. But I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? The last time we spoke, everything was brilliant. Frank was fantastic. I think we were challenging for top at the time. And then it just went absolutely pear-shaped. And it's really hard now to even understand how it did. But, we've been around the block a while and I've seen players chuck it in before at Chelsea. And maybe there was an element of that. Who knows? I mean, I suspect we'll never get to the bottom of it. And frankly, no pun intended, it was really, really sad because, I've known you for a long time. You know me. You know a lot of Chelsea supporters, and you know how much we love Frank Lampard. So to see him go in the way that he did was really awful, frankly. However, Tommy T's Blue and White Army. I mean, Thomas Tuchel has just been quite unbelievable. I mean, I've seen Chelsea managers come in and turn things around, but he has been quite superb what he's done with the side. The obvious thing is he's absolutely sorted out the defense, and piece by piece you can see what he's trying to do. But what I love about him most, I think he's a very pragmatic manager. And I mean, I said it on the Fancast a few weeks ago, and they all laughed at me and said I was mad. But he reminds me in the way that he sets up a team very much like prime Mourinho. I mean, I've got that feeling back now that if we get 1-0 up, we'll close the game out. And I haven't felt like that at Chelsea for a long time. I mean, Antonio Conte, you could also make comparisons with in the way that he changed things around. But it's been absolutely superb. And here we are, 90 minutes away from another Champions League final. I mean, I didn't think that we would get past Atletico Madrid. So it's just crazy. Absolutely, typically Chelsea and very crazy.
I mean, your season went from some sort of not looking like all contenders to now potentially in the top four, winning the FA Cup and potentially even winning the Champions League again, which is remarkable considering what happened towards the end of Lampard's tenure. We're looking at this Chelsea team. What if you sort of pinpoint a couple of who really changed under Tuchel compared to how they were playing under Lampard? What sort of players would you be looking at?
Say that again. I got distracted. Sorry, Dom.
So in regard to players who maybe formed the best under Frank Lampard, but since Tuchel's really up their game, what sort of players would you really change their game since Thomas Tuchel's come into the club?
Well, that's a really good point, Dom. Actually, and I think that's one of the things that Tuchel has arguably, another absolutely fantastic thing that he's done, but a really surprising, nay, remarkable thing. Rudiger on his way out, clearly, a troublemaker in the dressing room. You could argue. He has looked like the player we signed. I mean, he's a German international, but he looks brilliant in defence, really solid. Christensen, who I think has always had a lot of talent, but I've always questioned his commitment and his physicality. He's upped his game, and he looks like a brilliant ball-playing and solid centre half. Jorginho, well, I mean, he's a bit of a Marmite player at Chelsea, but what Tuchel has done very well with him, I think, is to a degree, protected his weaknesses, which are his lack of tackling and mobility and pace. And he's got a system around Jorginho that gets the best out of him. Mount was flying anyway, but, he's gone on another level as well, as he seems to increasingly do. Azpilicueta, even though he's getting old and his legs are going a bit, he's almost the first player on the team sheet for Tuchel. He's clearly his captain, and I think he's had more minutes in games than anybody else. I mean, obviously, the one area where he hasn't quite solved it yet is up front. And, there's a bit of disgruntlement about the fact that Tammy's not getting much of a look in. Many people think he's getting a bit of a raw deal. Billy Gilmore hasn't had a look in, and we think that he's getting a bit of a raw deal. But you can see what he's trying to do. Pulisic, he's eased back in, and there have been glimpses that Pulisic is getting back to his best. Werner still couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo. But, he's contributing in other ways. And Havertz is beginning to look like a decent player. I just think, Tuchel's man management and what he's trying, you can see what he's trying to do, and he's not only trying to progress the team in the way that we play football, trying to get the best out of players whose confidence was shot, but he's also, built a system which means that we don't get beaten very often. And he said in his first presser, he says, what I want is to create a Chelsea team that nobody wants to play against. And that means that you're hard to beat. And if you're hard to beat, you're going to win more matches than you lose. And then the confidence builds. And then he can start focusing on other areas, and we can start playing more attractive football and what have you.
Yeah, one topic was obviously not in regarding to the game. See, through your work with the Supporters Trust, which was obviously the whole Super League nonsense that came out. What was it, beginning of last week, end of the week before? What obviously the protesters of Chelsea was so well, and that's sort of lighted the end of team sort of dropping out of it when Petr Cech came out, when it was down obviously Kings Fulham Road. And so what is Chelsea fan sort of view towards the club? Is it still going to take a while for the relationship to be built back up again?
Well, I mean, as you know, I'm very heavily involved with the Supporters Trust, and that means that I get to have pretty regular meetings with some of the board directors at Chelsea. Some of whom I get on very well with, some of whom I like a lot, actually, but they let us down hugely. I mean, I don't need to tell you that. You're a fan of a club that wasn't one of the rats. And, I think we saw it very much like you did, as an existential threat to football and the game that we love and the whole legacy, culture, history and tradition of that. And it was absolutely, a step too far, and it had to be stopped. And I think, other than the work that the Supporters Trust did behind the scenes, the Football Supporters Association were very involved as well. But one of the things I was most pleased about this protest and how we got it stopped was that actually we all, as supporters, took the bigger view, which is, this is about football. This is not about tribalism and rivalry for once. We all need to stand together about this. So, we may take the mick out of you a lot, Dom, but actually the irony was, and I did a piece for Football London on this, the irony of a couple of weeks ago was that, after the protests, we then played Brighton in a terrible 0-0 boring draw in a match that we should have thumped them. But that was what we were fighting for. We were fighting for the right to have matches like that still, to have matches against Fulham, which means something. It's a local derby. It's got history. And they were threatening to take that away from us. And what Chelsea did as a football club was unconscionable, disgraceful, and they needed to be called out on it. And that's what we've done. And in terms of the relationship going forward, they've got a long way to go to build that trust up. And they need to start listening to us. And they need to start listening to the supporters who go to a match on a match day. I know we've got millions of fans all over the world, and I'm lucky that I know a lot of them, and they're great people. But it's the match day supporters that are really the guardians of the club and the soul and the spirit of the club. And we've been ignored and belittled and not listened to or valued for far too long. And they need to start listening to us and valuing us. And that's also what I think that whole protest was about.
I'm hoping a lot of football fans hope this is a turning point in regard to the relationship between club and match supporters, because although what the Super was and the absolute nonsense it was, what disgraced football it was, I think the hope is now that it will lead to bigger football reform in general that we can build on. It's not just protest against the Super League; it's protesting about so many things with modern football, so many things wrong with what a lot of match going fans for Fulham, for example, much rather watch his championship actually as opposed to the League, for example, because it feels more like football, if that makes sense. But one topic I want to talk to you about, and I was talking to a few of my mates yesterday in the pub, is Ruben cheek? And see, I've not been sharp opinions about Cheek this season. I think he's been awful. I think he's got one goal, zero, and that goal was deflected against Everton and back in the first season. I don't think he's been off. And what do you think the future holds someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek? Because I was not going to get into the Chelsea team. He hasn't impressed at relegation threat and impending relegation pretty much now. Side this season. You think the future holds a player like Loftus-Cheek? Because I don't know where he goes unless sort of another Premier League, sort of bottom of our Premier League team to a punt with him next year. Hopefully he can get something out of him that Sparko couldn't.
Well, I mean, funny enough, I was going to ask you that on our show tonight, but I haven't really seen much of him play. The bits I have, I mean, he doesn't, well, he has got the ability to have really torn it up for Fulham this year. There's no doubt about that. We were aware that there were issues in his game that still needed a lot of work on at Chelsea. But that year he had with us when Sarri was there, he really began to look like the player we knew he might become. And then he got that injury over in America, and that clearly put him way back. But I fear for him. I think he's missed the boat, to be really honest, Dom. You know, if he had any aspirations for getting a regular place in a club that is you know, as I said, I mean, you know, we're in the semi-final of a Champions League. We're in another FA Cup final. You know, I think next season we could well be challenging for the title. You know, can he break into a Chelsea side again? And I hate to say this, but I don't see it. I think his chance is gone. You know, we've got other players that, I mean, Billy Gilmore I mentioned. I mean, I know they're different players, but Billy Gilmore, you know, has got an enormous amount of talent. He can't break in. Mason Mount, I mean, the players that have come in from Chelsea, you know, under Frank, from the academy, it's really interesting to see how they develop. Tomori, it didn't work out, and we couldn't understand why, because we thought he was talented, and he's gone to AC Milan. Reece James has stepped in, and he's looking like a first-team player. You know, he's turned up, shown what he can do, and really pushed on as well. Mason Mount, I mean, I think Mason Mount's one of the best players in England at the moment. Certainly one of the best.
I mean, Mason Mount's definitely plays pretty wrong this season. I mean, going into this season, even on the Lampard in the first 6 months, I didn't quite see it. If you know, I didn't see what all my Chelsea mates were talking about. But I think since to come in the second half of the season,
I couldn't disagree with you more, Dom. You know,
for me,
I'm entitled to the opinion, but I completely disagree. I thought Mount showed in that first season with Lampard what a good player he was. It was no accident he was playing most games. I don't think it's Tuchel that's made
no,
it.
I don't know. Probably not, but I don't know what's changed. Because let's say for the first 6 months of the season, I wouldn't have been on England team sheet perspective is where I'm sort of sitting. He wouldn't have been in but now he's probably the second name on the team after Harry.
All right.
Whereas beginning of the season, I would have been you know, like some Mason, Grealish, and Foden were sort of on the same sort of they're competing for the same sort of places. I think, especially with his England performances. I mean, you know, the season obviously got got the goal against Belgium, which was at home against Wembley, obviously, and then in the March sort of qualifiers, as we saw how integral he is, and I think he definitely, although Chelsea fans will see it in a different light, how he hasn't changed under Tuchel. I think in this second half of the season, he has proved that the doubters from other clubs wrong in regard to. I think now fans. As I said, it might not be what Tuchel's done, but for some reason in the last few, I think fans are really seeing what Southgate and what Lampard has seen in him, what Tuchel sees in him, and I think it's really. I think other fans now realise the ability that Mason Mount has.
Yeah, okay. I mean, fair point. I mean, you know, I have very blue tinted spectacles on when it comes to Mason Mount because I think he's a phenomenal player. But I thought that when I first saw him. But I mean, like all young and very good players, he just gets better and better and better. And that's kind of really what you want to see. So the fact that he's at the level he is now is very much down to him and his own determination and ability, you know. And I mean, you know, he could go on to be one of the greatest players we've ever had. And I mean, I've been listening to the radio a lot this week, and there's been a lot of talk about Phil Foden, who I think is another exceptional player. And I mean, you know, these two are so good. Southgate needs to be building the England team around them, I think, because they are superb. I mean, for God's sake, Dom, he's what, 22, 23? And he was one of the best players on the pitch against Real Madrid the other night. at that age. I mean, it's fun, and making an impact, making a contribution to it. It's quite phenomenal. So, I mean, I can't, as you can tell, I can't speak highly enough of him.
Yeah, and so if we go into the game on Saturday, it's a weird one for them because I personally think it's sailed now. I think I just want this season to be done and over.
I know that feeling
because it's too much. You know, we saw Burnley against Wolves last week, who go 0 or 4-1, whatever it was. Fulham aren't going to go do that. So, what I think Scott Parker in his press conference on Thursday that, you know, Fulham are going to probably have to win every one of their games, and I probably agree with him, and I can't see that happening. What is this? What does this game, not in regard to it, but in just regard to this game league campaign where you guys are now, is it vitally important for you to get points and it just solidify that top four place?
Well, it absolutely is. I mean, I think number one is, I mean, it's a derby, but I think the minute that, you know, you don't have fans in the stadium, it ceases to really be one. We're the ones that make it a derby.
Yeah.
So you can take that element out of it. But the reality is for us, I mean, you know, last week was huge, actually. I mean, it's so important for us to beat West Ham. And now we're 3 points ahead of them. We're in fourth. We've got a really good goal difference, but we're still 4 points behind Leicester, 3 ahead of West Ham, 4 ahead of Liverpool in sixth, and only 5 ahead of Spurs. So number one, you know, it's really tight to try and get into the top 4 this season. So the pressure is on to win every match. And the other thing is, Dom, is that I think you could make a very good case for saying that we've arguably got the hardest run in. We've got Man City away next weekend. Then we've got Arsenal in midweek at home. Then we've got the FA Cup final. And probably, I don't know when they're going to rearrange the Leicester match. I'm not sure if they have already yet. But we've got City, Arsenal, and Leicester and Villa as our last 4 matches after you, and an FA Cup in between that, and hopefully a Champions League final. But certainly we've got the second leg next Wednesday. So it's a really hard run in. And I think there'll still be that pressure to win every game, because if you drop points, you could drop out of the top 4. So, you know, it's vital that we win on Saturday. It really, really is. And I mean, arguably, that's our easiest game. What worries me about it is that we've quite often shot ourselves in the foot with so-called easy games. I mean, West Brom springs to mind. And, of course, we'll have one eye on Real Madrid on Wednesday. I mean, I've just done a lineup for the show tonight, and I hope he actually rests a lot of our key players for Wednesday. It'd be interesting to see what he does. He quite often mixes and matches, but, you know, on the one hand, I don't want him to take the eye off the ball tomorrow because I think it's vital that we win. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to see Kante start, for example, tomorrow, because I think he needs to be wrapped in cotton wool. I'd say the same about Pulisic. I'd even think about resting Mount, which is unconscionable. Nobody rests Mount. Apparently, he doesn't need it, but I would, because I think it's really important that we win on Wednesday. But, you know, the reality is, Dom, our squad is good enough and deep enough for us to be able to rest a few players, I think, and still beat you lot tomorrow.
Yeah, like the way I said it, I remember a game against Chelsea away at Bridge. I've been less bothered because, well, as you mentioned, there's no fans there. I said it this week, and I think there's probably a fair few Fulham fans who would agree that I don't want us to win, because I don't want our first win at Stamford in my lifetime to be when I'm not there. It doesn't count. It doesn't. Same with Arsenal the other week. It doesn't count if I'm not there. I don't want our first win at this ground when I'm not there. I'd love a draw, like an equaliser, just get that sort of euphoria, last minute equaliser. But I don't really, I don't want our first win at Stamford in my lifetime to be, as I said, when I'm not on the ground. For me, it doesn't really matter. Although it's not open to be staying up in the Premier season. I mean, I think it is, and I think a lot of Fulham have accepted that. We just simply aren't going to through 3-4 games. It's going to happen. You know, we've only won four or five games in the season. Like, it's not going to happen. I think we've won the same amount of games in the city of Liverpool. We have a City of London in this season. That's how bad our record has been at home and in London derbies. But yeah, for me, I do want to see, you know, us play positively tomorrow and take advantage of you guys with having obviously your eye game on a massive game for you on Wednesday night, obviously against Real Madrid. But as I said, it's a bit of a weird thing for us that I kind of want the season to be over. I don't really want the first win at Stamford Bridge to be when I'm not there. It's a very strange situation, Chidge. Thank you very much for coming on the Fulhamish YouTube channel to look ahead game. Obviously, one last question, as always, is what's your score prediction for the game?
Well, it'd be interesting, actually, because, I mean, what you are particularly good at is closing people down, being really aggressive and pretty solid. You know, you don't get hammered often, but equally, you don't score many goals. And I suspect that Scotty Parker will go, you know, with 5 in the middle and 1 up top tomorrow. So, you know, you're going to be really hard to break down, you know, and at the moment, you know, we're not scoring a lot of goals, but we're like really, really hard, you know, to score against. So I don't see us giving you an absolute pasting. So I think it'll be tight. I think it might actually only be a goal in it, a 1-0 or a 2-0 maybe.
I tend to agree. I can't see the game more than 2 goals in it. But I think, again, as you see, I said we don't concede, but I said we can't score. So you know, our goal again was a dubious penalty, and you just don't look like scoring goals at the moment. Unfortunately, you know that could change tomorrow. I don't know, but yeah, it's a very weird situation for Fulham fans. It's sort of like it's the South West side, but also we kind of want this season to be finished with. I mean, the only positive is there were rumoured that there could be away fans at both the games that are going to be at the end of the season beyond May 17th. So, I mean, Fulham fans could look forward to that. Funny seeing some of the really good local players we've had in the flesh. You will see twice, and then probably see again in the Anderson and Areola stuff. But yeah, this has been obviously the Fulhamish, our preview head of South West 6 derby at Stamford Bridge. Thank you very much, Stage, for joining us. And as I said, make sure to check out Chelsea Frank. I'll leave their Twitter and leave Chidge's Twitter's link down below. But I said this has been a YouTube channel. See you guys next time.